But when you were publishing this report and getting your data, your researches across African economies, perhaps across 55 countries, if I'm not mistaken, what are the major headwinds that Africa had to deal with in 2022 and possibly are the headwinds for 2023?
Okay, thank you. As I already hinted, we have had what the president of the bank normally calls the three C's. We have increasing impacts of climate change that is increasing losses and damages on the continent. So the physical risks of climate change has deepened the fiscal risks that countries face. If you looked at our report, the African Economic Outlook report of 2022, you saw that we estimated that the continent will need up to 1.6 trillion US dollars between now and 2030 to address just implementing the nationally determined contributions to address climate change. And we're seeing losses and damages that is growing in the economies because of the increased impacts of climate change. But we also see a lot of conflicts that is happening, geopolitical conflicts like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but also regional and local conflicts that we see across the continent. It's also increasing risks for economies and creating a lot of capital outflows from this continent. But again, we have the challenges of COVID that still remain, given that Africa still has about 26% of its population vaccinated. So these were high-level risks that we saw on the continent. And these risks created a lot of domestic and external shocks that has increased the challenges on the continent. Inflation is one of them. Currency devaluation and volatility in the global financial markets is another. But also the global contraction that we're seeing, the risk of recession that we're seeing across the world is also having pass-through effects on the continent. And if I give you one typical example, the appreciation of the dollar simply meant that then the value of currencies, a lot of devaluation in Africa's currencies, and also higher repayment for the debt that already was high on the continent following the COVID-19 pandemic. So and that meant that countries still have a lot more to do in order to repay the existing debt. But it also constrained access to the global financial markets and capital markets for additional borrowing that is required to address the growing fiscal challenges that the continent continues to face. So a lot of all these challenges were so confounding, and it requires very bold and proactive coordinated policy options in order to be able to address them going forward. But the good news is that our report still shows that despite all these headwinds, the Africa's economies has been resilient.